Thanks for joining us at Church Experience Online. If you'd like to learn more about the church, get connected to the community, or help fuel the movement by giving, just click on the link in the description below.
So our family was up at 12 Stone Church before we moved down here to Clearwater, and there was an outdoor event that was going on at the church and where they had a large bounce house, and some of our kids were inside playing in the bounce house with several other kids, and somehow the power that fueled the bounce house and kept it inflated, somehow the power went out momentarily, and the walls of the inflated bounce house started to slowly cave in on the children. So the older kids, instead of grabbing little sister or little brother, they just take off, so they're out. And so you got a few of these toddlers like in this bounce house, and probably relatively not too dangerous, but still these walls of this bounce house are caving in, and these netted walls are coming in. And so the parents, they're scrambling and they're going and grabbing their kids and stuff. And eventually the air gets turned back on and the walls are back up and it's good. But perhaps you sit here today and you feel like, or you will or have felt like the walls in your life are caving in on you. And you remember that distinct feeling of the pressure, of the weight while you wait for things to change. And you may today have come in here carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, and you're waiting for life to load, you're waiting for God to do something different, new in your life, you're waiting for things to get better, for them to improve, you feel the pressure of life, and that is not an easy road to walk. And so these last few weeks we've been learning about how we wait on life to load, and while God works in our life, what He's doing while we're waiting. And we've been looking in Exodus, in the Bible, at this story of the nation of Israel. And God's people, as they journeyed to the promised land, and they waited on what God had for them. And in that season, there's so many lessons for us to learn. And so one more time today, we're going to go back to that story in Exodus chapter 16. And as we're tracking with this group, I know that there's probably some of us who can identify with the pressure and the desperation that can come when you feel like the walls are closing in on you. You might feel like, I've been waiting for things to change, but I'm getting older and time is running out. You might feel like I'm losing control of this situation in my life. This aspect of my career or of my family is out of control and I don't know what to do, or I'm drifting farther away from where I need to be. And while I wait, the pressure is closing in on me. And if you feel that way, I think there's some great things that we can learn together today from Exodus chapter 16, beginning in verse 1. The nation of Israel is traveling through the desert. It says, the whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. So they're in the desert, they're hungry, they're traveling, this large nation of people, and they get desperate. And they're complaining. Verse 4, then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So the nation of Israel, while they waited, their lack of caused desperation in their lives. Hey, we'd rather go back to slavery. They really wouldn't rather be in slavery, but man, we at least have food to eat. They're saying extreme stuff. They're thinking extreme thoughts. They're probably willing to do some extreme things because they're desperate. And we get desperate sometimes in our lives. And the desperation can turn into hopelessness, which can cause you, if you're not careful, to think really extreme stuff that's not helpful, to say extreme things, which can be damaging to your life, your career, your situation, your future. It can cause us to make really destructive decisions. And, I think sometimes people give up on what could eventually for them be the dream because they're getting desperate with some aspect of it. And it's good to go to God and ask for help when you get desperate, but you don't have to wait until you're hopeless. It's good to share with others when you need help. And people can't help you when you're desperate if you don't share the struggle with them. Unless you get real with them, they can't help you. They don't know what's going on. In your notes, I put the lesson this way, that you can ask for help before you get hopeless. You don't have to wait till you hit rock bottom to get help. You can ask for help. And you ask, first of all, God for help, but asking somebody else. You can ask for help before you get to hopeless. And you don't, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ and you have Jesus in your life and you've been forgiven of your sins and he's with you and the Spirit of God's in you, listen, you're never truly hopeless. You might feel hopeless, but you're not hopeless because we hope in Jesus. And with Jesus, we say this often, the best is always what? It's always yet to come. With Jesus, the best is always yet to come. You have hope as a believer. So we get discouraged and we get desperate when things start to close in on us. Exodus chapter 16, jumping down to verse 13, you see God's provision for his people while they waited. That evening, quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." God literally rained down bread for them and provided for them supernaturally. The quail, the bread, the manna, he provided this food for them in their desperation. See, God provided what they needed when they needed it. Let's talk about one of the greatest areas of desperation for most people. Talk about feeling like the walls are closing in on us. Talk about feeling the pressure of life. There's few things like finances and the pressure that comes with them to make us feel like the walls are closing in on us while we wait for our future, while we wait for things to change, while we wait for things to get better. And I titled this message, Waiting for Our Finances to Improve, because I think that there's probably a lot of people that are in that situation. And if not now, maybe there'll be a time and an unexpected surprise or medical bills or a lost job, and there's those seasons that we go through, and it can be a spiritual thing. It can be a season of learning to trust more in God. In fact, finances and everything practical in our life, really underneath that, the surface, is something spiritual. A friend of mine just told me, he said, "Hey, there's nothing like alcohol and money to magnify your character." Right? Because money is one of those things that like magnifies your character. Whatever you are, the more money is going to magnify it, make it bigger. It's going to show who you are inside. If you're a kind and generous person, it's going to show that, and you have money, you'll do generous things with it. If you're a greedy, selfish person and you do destructive things when you have money, and you get more of it, you're going to do destructive things with it. It's going to be a bad thing for you. And so it's not just a practical thing, it's a spiritual thing, and there's some lessons that we can learn from this. But, we talk about providing for our families, providing for ourselves. Man, this is an area that has a lot of pressure that can feel hopeless, and it can cause desperation. And when you feel desperate, man, you can even get confused when you're desperate.
All right, Barry, are you ready?
I am, Eddie.
The question for $1 million. What is the first letter in the English alphabet? Is it A, C, B, D, C, A, or D, B? What is the first letter in the English alphabet?
Well, it's A, isn't it?
I don't know, mate, is it?
Well, yeah.
So you want me to lock that in?
Yes, please, Eddie.
Lock in A.
Yep. Oh, well, hang on. What I mean is C.
C?
Yeah.
First you said A, and now you want to change it to C. Well, what do you want me to lock in?
Oh, no, the answer is A, so lock in C. C, A.
C, A. I need an answer, mate.
Yeah, no, lock in A.
So that's your answer?
Yeah, A is my answer.
Okay.
So you locked in C?
Oh, listen, mate, you can't have it both ways. Either I lock in C or I lock in A.
A.
So you want to lock that in? Lock in A.
The answer is A.
It's locked in.
So you locked in C?
Shut up. Well, $1 million. What is the first letter in the English alphabet? You said A.
Meaning C.
The answer is C. A is the first letter in the English alphabet. Sorry, Barry. We're unfortunately out of time here on Millionaire, but we'll see you next time, eh? It's not that hard, is it, mate?
I knew it was A.
It's funny, ridiculous, but as funny as that might be, when you're losing at the money game of life, man, it can get deep.
They watched their million-dollar dreams go down the drain. On the Fox game show Million Dollar Money Drop, this couple made a big bet, only to lose $800,000 when they got the answer wrong. Or did they get it wrong? That's the costly question that has turned into a TV controversy.
Okay.
A, Macintosh computer.
Good at computers.
Okay. B,
I'm good at computers.
Sony Walkman.
Okay. Okay, I had one of those. I had one of those.
Post-it
All right,
note.
yeah, I do that every day.
Which of these was sold in stores first? Talk it over.
It was a key moment in this new game show that gives contestants $1 million and takes it away if they don't know the right answer.
I'm gonna go with Post-it notes. Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay.
Gabe Okoye convinced his girlfriend, Brittany Métis, to bet $800,000 that Post-it notes were invented first. Happened on the very first episode of Million Dollar Money Drop, and that's just what the money did. Crushed Okoye and Métis went on to lose what was left. But it wasn't until they returned to their everyday life at home in Southern California that they learned the money drop was a mistake. A mistake brought to light by viewers, launching an instant internet backlash against Fox, demanding the show pay up and posting the facts about Post-its online. It turns out 3M sold the Post-it in 1977 under the name Press and Peel, then changed the name to Post-its in 1979, same year as the Sony Walkman. After days of denials, the producers finally admitted, unfortunately, the information our research department originally obtained was incomplete. We feel it is only fair to give our contestants, Gabe and Brittany, another shot to play Million Dollar Money Drop.
You know, a lot of us feel like no matter what we do, even if we think we're given the right answer in life, no matter what we do, we cannot win at the money game of life. And maybe you feel that way. Maybe you feel like, man, it doesn't matter what I do. I just can't get it right. And the floor is always dropping out from underneath me, and I just cannot get ahead. I cannot win with finances. I cannot win with provision in my life, and I just can't see how it's going to ever work. And a lot of people feel that pressure, and that's why this message, waiting on our finances to improve, I think is so relevant for us, because I think that there's issues that we all have to deal with. I mean, money is a part of all of our lives. What's in the account? How much money's coming in this month? How much money's going out? And that's a part of all of our reality. But the amazing thing is God offers help for those, and I'm sure there's many today who are struggling in this area of life, or you have or you will. This is something that God offers practical help for us when it comes to finances. And in this story of Exodus, I want to look back again at Exodus chapter 16. There's actually an amazing principle from God when it comes to this area of life that applies to so many other areas of our life. In Exodus chapter 16, let me read some of this, verse 19. So God's providing for them, and it says, then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. He's talking about the bread, the manna that fell from heaven that God provided each day for them to eat. It's like, no one is to keep any of it till morning. You have enough to eat for that day, that's it. All right? Verse 20, however, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake, boil what you want to boil, save whatever is left, and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the Sabbath day to gather it, but they found none. The Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day, and no one is to go out. So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. When the Israelites discarded God's instructions related to his provision, things did not go well for them. God had instructions that revolved around his provision. And why would he do that? Why would he not just give them, they could go eat whenever they wanted, whatever they needed, they just grab it? Because here's the thing, God didn't give them independent provision. He wanted to teach them to be dependent on their provider. And God could provide in a moment whatever we need, and he could always give us all the assistance we need and just drop cash into our lives. He's able and powerful to do that. He owns everything. He can do what he wants. But God doesn't want to just give them independent provision. He wants to teach them to be dependent on him, on the provider. Because he knows that there'll be another crisis, there'll be another situation. And if they could solve everything on their own without dependency on God, without trusting God, without following God's direction, then they'll disown him when it's convenient and pick up their faith in God whenever it works out for them, whenever it's a good thing for them, and whenever it seems to be in their favor. See, God offers practical help for us and gives us direction, and he gives us instructions. In fact, his principles are woven all throughout life, and all throughout the Bible you can see God's principles on finances. Yet we still struggle with them. So the wise, listen, I put it this way, the lesson this way in your notes. The prudent, they live by financial principles. The discerning, the wise, the godly, they live by financial principles. My principles. God offers practical help for us, but we have to live these principles out in our lives. And so today I hope as we walk through 4 different principles here, that I hope bring practical help to people who are wrestling with this. Or maybe you're taking good notes and you can share this with a friend who's really struggling and they're always coming to you saying, hey, can you give me $20, man? It's like they're struggling, they need some help. Or maybe you want your child one day as they're trying to figure out finances. I hope these principles will be helpful for you because they're all throughout the Bible. I believe they're helpful, but you have to not just learn them, you have to do them. You have to live them out. It's something you do. All right, so here's the first principle. Maybe you want to write it down. Restraint and reserves. Restraint and reserves. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For the Spirit of God that God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. So the Spirit of God inside us doesn't make us weak, it makes us strong. It gives us power. It gives us love and compassion, but also gives us self-discipline. Self-discipline. In Galatians, it talks about the byproduct of the fruit of God in your life, and it lists out like 9 qualities. It calls it like the fruit of the Spirit. This byproduct of the Spirit of God being active and living and working in your life. And one of these byproducts of the Spirit of God in your life is self-control. So self-discipline, self-control, these are aspects of our faith and our life that comes when the Spirit of God is in us. Most people don't live with restraint, especially in the area of our finances, right? I mean, this is so hard. If you're like you're Starbucks, maybe you're at Smoothie King, or you're someplace you're ordering a soda off a menu, and you're looking up and you're like, all right, I just need a quick drink. I just need something, I'll just get a soda. It's only a couple bucks. I can get a water, but I'm going to go with the soda, a couple bucks. And you're looking, it's like, well, it's only 50 cents more to get a bigger size. It's only 50 cents more to get the medium. I should just get the medium. It makes sense. It makes financial sense. I mean, if this is $2 for that much, a little bit more, and you know what, the large, if I'm in a medium, I might as well just spend another 50 cents. I'm going to get the large, and if they have an extra large, they win every time, right? They win every time. It doesn't matter if it's a smoothie or a coffee. They win every time, because they know that. Why do they price it that way? Because they know that we're gonna take the bait and we're gonna draw in, because we just every time it's like we're drawn in. A little bit of extra. It's another just one more thing in my cart on Amazon. Not a big deal. Man, this gets rough when you're at the Cobb Theater, man. You're sitting there through a movie, and maybe it's been a while since you've been in a movie, but you're sitting there and you're getting hungry, you didn't eat dinner, but you wanted to catch the movie time, and you're sitting there, it's a little low point in the movie. I'm gonna go get some popcorn, and you go out and a little bag of popcorn is like way overpriced, but you're willing to pay for that because you're hungry, and they're like, hey, you can just spend like an extra $1 and you can get the medium, and you're like, man, that's way bigger, and that makes sense. And then it's like, well, if you're gonna do that, you might as well get the big tub, because that's unlimited refills. And the movie's halfway done, you're not gonna get a refill, but it's like unlimited refill. It's like, that makes financial sense. I'm gonna get the big tub. Man, I'll tell you where this gets real bad is when you go into Cold Stone. Don't go into Cold Stone, man. Just don't do it. But you got a brother-in-law. He's coming down to visit from out of town, and you want to treat him right. So you take him down to downtown Safety Harbor somewhere, and you're going to Cold Stone. You walk in there, man, and they're like, and they call their different sizes like it and love it. I mean, they're just baiting you in, and you're like, man, that ice cream looks good, and it's this much for the small and the medium. Man, I might be hungry if I eat just the small. And then they're like, hey, just a little bit extra for some more toppings, just throw some toppings on. It's just that little bit extra, it's just only a little bit more. And man, you're done. You lose. You don't need more ice cream. I mean, come on, we don't need more ice cream. But you get more ice cream, right? It's because we're operating by the wrong principle. It's just a little bit more. It doesn't matter. Another $20 here, another $30 there, another 50 cents there. And we lose all the time in our finances because we don't practice restraint. See, it's not about the number. It's about the principle. And next time you're shopping or the next time you're considering a decision, man, it's the principle. And how do you win with that? It's not focusing on the 50 cents that you save from the small to the medium. That's not where you win from the medium to the large. That 50 cents, that dollar is not going to probably change your life. It's the principle. It's when you walk out of there knowing that you only got what you needed, and you practice self-control and self-discipline, and you lived by a principle. And you were not sucked in and driven by a whim of someone's pricing chart that got you to get something you didn't need. It's like buy one, get one free. I don't need none, but I got one to get one free, and now I got two of something I didn't need because it was on a sale. Like, we lose again and again and again because we're not operating by principles. And God gave you the Spirit of God in you to live with self-control, with restraint. And not only to restrain yourself, but to save it, to practice reserves and to, see, here's the thing. Some people get excited about getting a raise. More money will solve my problem, right? That's what we think. Like, man, if I can just get a raise or a bonus or something, I'll just solve my problems. But the reality is that if you look back on the last 90 days of your checking account, that you can give yourself a raise tomorrow. Now, if you can ask your boss for a raise and they'll give it to you, great, that's a good thing, do that. But you can give yourself a raise. And it's going to be a whole lot more than what your boss is going to give you. You look back in the last 90 days of your checking account, and you look back at the expenditures in your life, and you're like, oh, man, yeah, I probably shouldn't have gone out to eat there. I didn't really need to do that. I was just having a bad day, and I was like, Chili's will make it better. It made it better for like a few minutes, and then I was paying for it the next day. And then you look back and you're like, man, I got to not shop online. I need to get that app off my phone. I need to, and you look back over the last 90 days and you're like, man, I could have saved a little bit here. I could have saved a little bit here. I didn't really need that. I probably could have not taken a trip down the snack aisle at Publix when I was hungry. I probably should have been shopping at Walmart when I was not hungry. It's like, and you look back over 90 days and you're like, man, I could give myself a big old raise right now. And that's true for most people. And it's restraint, it's self-control. And God's given you self-control. And it's a principle that's all throughout the Bible that he wants for us. And it impacts not just this area. Man, you talk about other areas of our life with, priorities and pleasure and all these kind of things. Self-control will change your life. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores, it restrains, it reserves, it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20, the wise store up choice food. They store up choice food. That takes self-control. That takes restraint. They store up choice food and olive oil. But fools, they gulp theirs down. There's no thought of tomorrow. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. And to practice restraint and reserves, listen, savings will give you options for your future. It's a biblical principle. Most people don't live by it. I'm just telling you it's a biblical principle, and I hope it helps somebody. All right, let's move on to the next one. Hard work. Hard work. So you want to change your financial picture. You're feeling the pressure while you're waiting on life. What's God got to help me with this hard work? This is obvious, but many people, they suffer because they don't understand that character precedes cash. And character in our life is so important. And when you're working, and you know what the typical office drama is like, around your workplace, well, they don't pay me enough, so I'm just going to kind of slack. I'm just going to kind of do what I need to do to get by. I'm going to do enough so that I don't get in trouble, but that's all. I mean, they kind of cheat me and shortcut me here, and, they don't really care anyway, and no one's really looking, and the other guy, he's not doing his part, so why am I going to do my part? And it's a character issue. It's not a cash issue. It's a character issue. And when we learn the principle is that God is honored with hard work, Colossians 3:23, It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. It's working for the Lord, not for men. So you realize, okay, my supervisor is not this dude in the corner office or that lady that's walking by with the thing around her neck. Like, that's not the supervisor. My supervisor is my Savior. Like, God is my supervisor. It says, whatever you do, work out with all your heart is working for the Lord, not for men. So you're working for him anyway. And we see throughout the Bible that God sees everything we do. So here's the question. Are you working hard or are you hardly working? Because I know people that have a hard time providing, and part of the problem is that, we don't want to work. We don't really want to go after it. And we're like, man, I wish I had this, or I wish I could do this, or I wish I could save up here or do that. But we don't really want to work. And we have all of our excuses. But as it was shared with me by someone one time, your excuses and your reasons, they explain you, but they don't excuse you. And you can explain yourself out of doing the right thing, but it doesn't excuse you from doing the right thing. And so working hard, and this is a principle all throughout the Bible. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23, it says, all hard work brings a profit, not casual work, not just work when you feel like it, not just show up, walk in, whatever time you feel like doing. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 19. Says, those who work their land, check this out, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. Man, that's good, because how many people get sucked into the get-rich-quick scheme kind of life thing? It's like, man, I just haven't been managing my money well is the truth, and it's just not going well, and I'm in a hole, and I'm not anywhere near where I want to be, and then something comes along, hey, this opportunity, this will make you wealthy, this will make you rich. If you could just do this thing, get in this program, do this deal, and sign up for this or whatever, then, man, this is going to hook you up. And what happens? It's another mess. It doesn't go anywhere. And it says, listen, chasing fantasies will get you nowhere, but hard work, it yields a profit. Those who work their land and care for what they've been entrusted with, they'll be given more. Those who are faithful with little will be entrusted with more. And if you're not trustworthy with a little, you won't be faithful with a lot. And God knows these things. And this is a spiritual issue. This is not just a practical issue. There's a lot of practical, but there's some real spiritual underneath this. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, New Testament says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So we're called to put our effort in. It's hard work to provide. If you have a family, even just caring for ourselves, I mean, it's hard work to provide, to put food on the table, to roof over our heads and provide. But if you don't, I mean, you're denying a core responsibility that God's entrusted you with. That's a mission, an assignment, something important that you do for him, not for self. Are you giving your best at work? Are you working hard to add value? And are you doing it for the Lord? It's a financial principle. All right, let's move on to this third financial principle. I hope this helps somebody, and that's margin. That's the word there if you want to write it down, and maybe you want to write this down for somebody else. But margin. Margin, what's margin? That's simple. Margin is the difference between what comes in and what goes out. And so if you have more coming in, and I know this is simple, like a kid can understand it, but I don't know why most of us don't do it, but if there's more coming in than is going out, then that difference is margin. Now, if you have more going out, like a lot of people, than what you have going in, that's not called margin, that's called deficit. A deficit gets us in trouble. That's called debt. And that's why you get country song, this thing, things like, there's too much month left at the end of the money. That's how we get that kind of stuff, because that's living with the deficit and not with margin. And that'll ruin your life. That'll mess you up. In fact, God has a lot to say about debt too. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. So you're slave to the lender. When you have debt, you're stuck in that commitment, that financial commitment, that responsibility. So, what I see here is that there are so many ways we can get it wrong, but there is a clear way to get it right. It's just easy to say, hard to do. And what we expect and inspect tends to improve in our lives. And if you expect to have margin, then I think you can get there, and you can work hard to that, to keep your expenses low and to find ways to not spend and find ways to increase your income over time. And it may take years, but you can find a way to make more come in and less go out, and you can find margin, I believe. You can make that happen. And that's a principle, and that will be a blessing in your life and your future. So what you expect, but also what you inspect. And most people don't know whether they have a margin or a deficit each month. They look in their checking account, pull it up on their phone. Hey, I got a little cash. Let's go out to eat, man. Let's go watch some movies. Let's go do something, And I know I'm making light of it, but man, that's real. And a lot of people, it's like, do I have money in the bank? Can I go spend it? And there's no like, hey, this is in a month, how much is coming in? This is how much going out. Because that takes work and time, and who's got time to figure that out? I'm too busy spending. I've got time to keep track of it. I can keep all those receipts, man. It's a lot of work. It's like, if you don't know, what you inspect, you will tend to improve on. And so there's all kinds of ways to do this in an easy, Mint.com is a great website. It's totally free, Mint.com. You can buy software that does the same kind of stuff like Quicken, and you can hook it up to your bank account or your credit card, whatever you spend money, and it will automatically download the transactions when you log in. And then you can look back over the last 90 days and you can kind of inspect, how am I doing? How much is coming in? Okay, what came in this month? What went out this month? And how am I doing on that? A practical thing that some people don't do, and then they get upside down and they feel pressure and they're waiting and they're praying to God, help me, please, I'm stuck. God's like, well, I want to help you, but you're not operating on principles that I've designed to help you. Margin. Number 4, let's talk about this. Generosity. Generosity. My mentor, Pastor Kevin Myers, said, we make trades in life all the time, and the real challenge is to trade up in life and to trade, whether it's you're trading your time or your resources or your energy, to trade them for investments that make a difference. But the problem is a lot of us trade our cash for things that we will one day sell in a garage sale and that do not mean all that much to us. And so we're chasing things that don't matter. And especially when it comes to the kingdom of God, we have an opportunity to trade up, to make investments with our life into people and live generously. And generosity is a principle. People who live generously, they're operating by a different program than the most of our world. In fact, Dave Ramsey, we heard him teach here at Church Experience back in November. You can go on our YouTube page and hear that. And I think that was really super helpful for a lot of people. And Dave has said people who win with money are always givers. 100% of them are givers. Whether they're people of faith or not, they're always givers, always. You will not win with money until you learn how to give. You just won't. Generosity is a principle of God. It's super important. And especially when it comes to caring for the poor. God talks so much in the Bible about generosity and caring for those in need, caring for others, living not just for yourself, but for others. But when you have no margin, you have no ability to do that. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 9. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. They share their food with the poor. Man, I love that every single month that we together, we're helping people in need. Every single month that goes by, and Unleashing Compassion, we're helping people, families, individuals. We do things just on the down low all the time, helping people. You've heard about a lot of the initiatives that we've done because we've shared them from the stage, whether it was the 10 causes locally that we gave to, we started, and then again at the end of last year, things like Clothes the Kids of Clearwater and Clothing Kids in Poverty, or giving resources to the Homeless Empowerment Project, and we've sent people there to serve, and just helping the poor in our community, or Habitat, or all the different things that are out there we've done to serve globally through World Hope International, helping the poor beyond our borders. There's been a lot of awesome opportunities. We already, a little over a year old as a church, have already been able to do, helping a family that needed a car at Easter, getting a car. I mean, there's so many just different awesome things we've been able to do, and on. And I love that. And why help the poor through a church? Why would a church do that together? And why not just do that individually? And I think you can do that, and that's great. But why does our family like doing it through the church? What we like doing is because when you give to the church, first of all, a lot of times we vet out and find Christian organizations like a World Hope that we serve through, and then they're helping people not only practically but spiritually as well with the physical. I think it's also, though, even when you give to a group that's not overtly Christian and they're helping the poor, they see that comes from a church and not just a generous random person, but they see that coming from a church, and they see that Christ stamps on that. And I think that's impacting, and we can do so much more together. So I love that. Last year we ended our first year as a church in December. So a few months back, and we said 15 in 2015, we're going to try to give away $15K, and you guys went way above and beyond that, and we gave away over twice that in December to help the poor, to help start churches. And we gave money to a lot of other new churches that are around as new or younger than we are. We're like, hey, we want to do that. And so we said, twice a year, we want to try to be the kind of church, and we're doing stuff all throughout the year, but there's a couple times where we want to do a big initiative and ask the people to step up and let's make a difference together. And there's a lot of causes that we could be a part of, but let's do stuff that's eternal. And so we're going to do that again in June and early July. Talk about being generous. I want to give you a practical opportunity to do that. And we're going to do 2 things. It's going to be so cool. Actually, 3 things. First of all, we've been talking about for the longest time maybe doing like a shoe drive. And your shoes actually can help someone that's living in poverty overseas. Actually can be a bigger help than what you'd imagine. And a shoe that you'll sit around in your home and like sell in a garage sale like 5 years from now, or just throw out that you're not even wearing. That's a huge gift that helps someone, getting shoes on their feet and getting to work. And so we're going to collect shoes. We're going to collect resources, and we're going to put some of that towards a project locally and unleashing compassion, help the poor locally. We're going to unleash compassion and help the poor globally beyond our borders. And so some of that, about $5,000 total, is going to be split between those two causes. And then we're going to finish something, hopefully, God willing, this year that we started. When we started this church, we said, hey, before we started, an association of related churches, a network of independent churches, said, hey, we'll help you guys get started. It's one of the things we do. And we'll give you guys $50,000 to start. And so all the sound system equipment and the 400 feet of pipe and drape walls that we set up around the school and the trucks that we store everything in and all the kids' stuff and the cribs and the screen and the computers and all the different things that help get it actually started so you can have a service. All that was generously given to us and provided for us. And we said before we even started, we want to invest that back and start another church. And hope, God willing, maybe we'll be able to do more than that long term, but we don't want to wait till we're 5, 10 years old to do something. We want to help another church get started. We've seen how impacting this is. This has changed lives. I mean, we're seeing every week people get connected and there's growth happening in our lives, and God's growing us and sending people, and people are changing. And we've seen 114 people baptized and dozens more commit their lives to Jesus Christ, be changed, freed from addictions and marriages that were falling apart, be strengthened. I mean, all kinds of stuff, people getting connected in groups and serving and finding a mission with their life. It's amazing, and we want to help another church do that. And so it's now happening here in our community. That's great, but there's lots of communities around our country that need that. And so last year we gave $25,000 collectively towards that project, and we're going to give another 10 here in June. And so we'll be getting real close to that goal and hopefully maybe finish it off here at the end of the year. And man, wouldn't that be awesome if we could pass that on and start another church? So we already, as a new one-year-old church, got to do that. I think that'd be incredible. So we're going to do that, and it's an opportunity. And whether you're a part of something like that, and you'll hear more details about that as we get closer, but whether you're part of some awesome, call it Summer Impact or whatever you want, initiative like that, great. But regardless of that, you have the responsibility and opportunity to live generously every day of the week. You know people that are in need. You get to live generously and serve with your time and your resources, and we get to live in a way that honors God. Let's talk on one more aspect of this, honoring God. Proverbs chapter 3. Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9. It says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. I love the principle, the financial principle of this is that we're called to honor God with whatever we have, with all of our lives, all of our resources, all of our wealth. We're called to honor God in that. And it says we honor God, and then, we can expect God's blessing in our lives. And this is not if I do this, if I'm going to slide a few dollars towards you, God, then I'm going to expect you to hook me up over here. It's not like that, but it's saying that as you honor God, God honors you. God honors those who honor him. And throughout the Bible, God's principles of generosity are so clear that he's a generous God. He gave even of his own son, and he intends for us to be generous people. And the principle of giving, of tithing, giving our first tenth back to him, of honoring God, of being wise with what he's entrusted us with, giving joyfully when we give, to trust God to provide for us. I mean, all these truths and teachings are all throughout the Bible. And, sometimes we have a reluctance to be generous and give. And it's like, well, this is my pile of whatever. And if I give some, then, and that's just the wrong mentality. God wants us to joyfully see everything we have in our lives as his. And as we live and have opportunities to help the poor, to see people that don't know Christ, maybe in another community, through a new church, maybe through reaching out to someone through this church, making an impact in our city, seeing people come to Christ and seeing their eternity be different. God wants us to manage well everything we have so that he can unleash through us impact and compassion. And the sad reality is that although God's a generous God and wants us to be generous, we can get greedy in life and discontent. And that discontent, it fuels us, and discontent and greed destroys generosity. And so if you're greedy, you're never going to be generous. But if you're generous, generosity kills greed. So you want to overcome discontent and greed, live generously. Live generously. These principles, I think, will really help your life. But, there might be someone here today, before I give you this final question in your notes, that there's someone here today who's struggling with just actually having a plan. And you're like, man, I don't just give me a simple plan. I'm upside down on a lot of this stuff. I don't have margin. I don't know what's coming in and going out. I don't live with restraint, to be honest with you. I kind of do what I feel like doing, and if it works out, great. And maybe there's some here today, and it would just help you. And even if you're not in that situation and you're in a much better situation, there's still principles. Principles my parents taught me when I was a kid. And I remember them using some envelopes and teaching me. And here's a simple, very short video from my friend Kevin Queen shot in Chick-fil-A. And in a Chick-fil-A, just in a few minutes' time, he's going to deliver to you something I think that's so powerful that I think that could help some of you to at least get a simple plan going to redirect where your finances are today and hopefully help you. Check it out.
I've been looking forward to this. Chance for me to sit down with you and share a principle, something that I learned when I was younger that stayed with me. It's changed the way that I handle money, and some have called it the 10-10-80 principle. I want to share it with you as actually the give, save, live principle. So give, save, and live. Now, this is a way of prioritizing the way that we handle our money, and if you choose not to have priorities, you're going to choose to live with pressure your entire life. See, the prioritization is what creates margin in our lives. This space on the cup, this is the margin of the cup, and if the cup didn't have margin, it'd be a mess. It'd create a mess. Everything would spill over and create a mess all over the place, and people live with a mess all over the place financially when they don't have margin in their life with their finances. So we're going to talk about, through these priorities, is how you create margin in your life. Now, let's just say you get a job, and let's say the job's at Chick-fil-A, and payday's going to come. And so you end up, on payday, you end up making $10. So we're going to put these cups out here, and this represents the give, save, and live. So what's the first priority? Well, the first priority is the tithe. It's 10%. It's giving the first 10% back to God. It's an offering back to Him, because you want to be a candidate for favor. You want to live underneath His umbrella of blessing. So you give back to God. You honor Him. The second decision that you make is to save. But that's in the ideal world. And many of us, we live in the real world. And in the real world, what tends to happen is we tend to accumulate living expenses that take the rest of what we have. Now, we all have living expenses. We've got a place to stay, and we've got food to eat, and we've got to put clothes on our back. But what happens is when this gets out of control, everything goes toward that. But you've been doing the hard work. You've been figuring out how to squeeze money from your budget. And so let's just say you cut back on going out to eat many times a week. And then, or let's say you started carpooling, or that you started buying store brand at the grocery store. You've done the hard work, and you've saved $2. Now, you've got this $2 to put toward save, but not just yet. I want to talk about a critical point that many people overlook, and we're going to call it the Weeds Happen Fund. And so I want to press pause on save and bring into play the Weeds Happen. And so in order to build this Weeds Happen Fund, let's just say $1,000 that you want to save up for emergency. You've got these $2 to put toward that, but you've also, through creativity, you've figured out other ways to get more money. Let's just say you sold that treadmill that you got for Christmas. You sold that treadmill on Craigslist. It was supposed to be for your resolution, but you get $1. And let's also say that, you know, those jeans that you bedazzled and you sold those online on eBay. We're going to talk about you bedazzling clothes. We'll talk about that later. But you get another $1, and so now you've got $4 to put toward Weeds Happen. You're building up this fund, and the good news is another payday comes, and when another payday comes, you have a priority to make. You have a decision to make. It's that first decision to honor God. Then we've got that to stick to that budget that we set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so 7 goes to that budget. This leaves the remaining 2 for Weeds Happen. Now, surprise, surprise, it's good news. You got your tax return back. So another $2 goes to Weeds Happen. This closes out your Weeds Happen fund, because emergencies are going to happen. You're now prepared for that. So we're just going to move that over here for a time of emergency. This brings save back into play. And so you might think, well, now it's time to save, but not just yet. I want to talk about another area, and that's debt. Good news, it's payday. Another payday comes, and you've been honoring God with first fruits. God's blessed you. You got a raise. You got $13 now. And you know what? It's a good thing. Your birthday's rolled around, and surprise, surprise, your grandmother sent you a card, and you got $1 in the card. So that's add another $1 to the mix. And so now you've got a decision to make. What's your first priority? It's to honor God with the tithe. And so we'll put 2 in here. $1.40 would be toward that first fruits, honoring God. 60 cents, let's say it goes above and beyond the tithe, or to support a mission trip. And so you've made that decision. The second priority is to continue to stick to that budget, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It goes in your live fund. This leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to go toward debt. Now let's talk about debt for a second. In this strategy, you want to attack the lowest debt that you have first. This is called the snowball effect. And you'll attack the lowest debt, and after you pay that off, you'll pay the next lowest, and continue to go until you pay off the highest debt. And so here's the good news. Good news is you continue this strategy, eventually you're debt free. Close that out. And now that we've closed out debt, now it's time to start saving. And this is the time where you can begin to accumulate wealth. And so what we want to do is we want to make saving the second priority. So this means honoring God's the first priority, second priority is saving, and the third priority is living expenses. So the good news is another payday comes. And on that first priority, the decision you make is to honor God, first fruits. But now you have margin. Now you can begin to save and accumulate wealth. And then, because it's 10, 10, 80, now you have $8 to go toward living expenses. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Which leaves you with 3. And this is margin. You can make a decision about what you want to do with this. Maybe you want to go above and beyond and give to God. Maybe you want to begin to save and continue to build up and accumulate wealth. Or maybe you want to take this and just have fun. But now you have options. And you know what? You hear this and you might think, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm working with. This is all I've got. Or maybe you're listening to it, you're thinking, this is the lifestyle that I have. This is what I've got to work with. But the reality is, no matter where you're at, the 10, 10, 80 applies. It's the principle that applies. So here you are with $3. Speaking of having fun, I've got $3 left. You want to go get some ice cream? Yeah. Okay, come on.
It's not really how much you have or how little you have. It's the priorities that you live by and what you do with what you have that really makes a difference. I'm going to give you a closing question, but I want to read to you one final verse today from Deuteronomy chapter 8 to bring us back to where we started today. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 16. It says, He gave you manna, talking about the manna that God provided His people in the desert. He says, He gave you manna to eat in the wilderness, something your ancestors had never known, to humble and test you so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms His covenant, which He swore to your ancestors as it is today. You know, how you handle wealth in many ways is a test of your character. It's a test of how you will honor God. Will you manage well what God has given you? Will you be faithful to manage what He's entrusted with you, to do it in a way that honors God? And God is the one who's provided everything in our lives. Make no mistake about it. We work and we earn in our various jobs, but it's ultimately from God. It's His provision. So I want to remind you to be grateful and thankful. Even you've worked hard for it, but say, God, thank you for your provision in my life. And here's the closing question. It's in your notes. Maybe you want to write it down. Am I living gratefully and prudently managing what God has entrusted to me? So am I living gratefully? Am I living content, thankful and grateful to God for everything that He's provided in my life? Or am I living in greed, focused on not what I do have, but focused on what I don't have and what the next step is financially and what the more I need to get? Live gratefully and manage what God's entrusted to you. You have to answer this, and I have to answer this. Every one of us has to answer this question practically with our lives and with our actions. So what will it be? Our kids, we gave each of them a little pot recently, and we let them paint the outside of it however they wanted, and we put soil in it, and we let them go to the store and pick out one of these little seed packets. And they got to pick out these little seed packets and bury the seeds in their pots. Now, eventually, stuff starts to pop up out of the ground, and now we're in that stage where there's some things coming up. But do you know the hardest part the most difficult part, especially for a little kid. I mean, the worst part of waiting. You know, we've been talking about waiting in the series. The worst part of waiting is in that season where you planted, but nothing's come up out of the ground yet. And you're waiting for something to happen. And I'm fully aware of the fact that there are some of us here today who feel like, as we've been talking about loading and waiting for God to work in our lives and in our future and waiting on Him, and how He's at work, I just want to remind you that even though you don't see, I'm aware of this, that you don't see the tangible effect of what you hope one day will be in your life. I want to remind you of the truth that we see all throughout this story, that God is at work under the surface in your life. And He is at work. And we believe that with God, we have hope. Our situation, even when the ground is barren and we see no result of what we hope, we can believe that there is a seed of hope in our life that's growing and that God is at work. And with Jesus, there's always hope. The best truly always is yet to come in our lives. The best is yet to come, and God is at work in our lives. He's growing us up. He's growing our future. He's preparing for us something greater, but we have to trust Him in the meantime. We moved into our house about 1.5 years ago. These Adanita palm trees that I planted out in front of our house. It's a little set of 3 of them, and they're about waist high. And I love palm trees and flowers and nature and all that, and so I was really excited about this. And over the winter, the leaves, it didn't grow much, and the leaves, they started to kind of wilt a little bit, and so I took a picture of it and took it into an expert that works at a nursery, and I showed them this picture. I said, hey, so what's up? Is this got like a disease or something? What do I need to do? And they said, no, it's just the cold of the winter that did that. And it's okay. And I'm like, well, it's not growing. There's got to be something wrong. And they're like, no. He goes, we have this saying with gardening, like planting trees and flowers, and when you replant it into your place from where it was. He said, so the first year it sleeps, the second year it creeps, the third year it leaps. And I'm like, so explain that. Like, well, the first year you've replanted it and you've put this thing that was in a pot down in the ground, and so it doesn't have a root system yet. And so getting the water and the nutrients from the soil, it's still new, and so it's like it's asleep. It's not really growing yet, but it's growing underground. And the roots are spreading out, and it's building a foundation. In the second year, it's really starting to grow now, and the result of that root system is starting to take hold, but it's still slow growth. And it's just beginning. It's just starting, and there's that season of waiting. But then the third year, that's where we say it leaps, and it really starts to grow, and you see the strength come behind what's happened under the surface that no one else saw was going on. And that strength is now growing that tree into something that's amazing. And then you're going to see it's going to grow real fast, it's going to be real big, but it's in that waiting season. And listen, in your life right now, you might be in the season where you don't see anything happening. It's like it's asleep. God, are you asleep? God, do you care? I'm praying, I'm working, I'm trying to be faithful, I'm trying to make good decisions, and nothing is happening. And you're saying, it's asleep. And maybe for you, you're in the season where it's creeping along. And you're like, man, God, could you just move faster, accelerate my life? I'm trying to live for you. I'm trying to do the right things, and it's just not coming as fast as I hope it will. And I just want to remind you, if you're in a year of your life where it's creeping along, I just want to remind you that there will come a year that's a leap year for you, and it's going to come, and God's work's going to grow up out of the soil of your life. He's going to accomplish great things in you. He's going to do amazing things through you. You just keep being faithful. You just keep honoring God. And even when you're not faithful, God's faithful. He's growing you. He's shaping you. He has a future for you, and the best for you is yet to come. The best for you is hidden in Jesus, and the seed of Jesus and His hope in our life will not fail us, and He will grow up something great if you will trust Him. Keep your eyes on Him. The best is yet to come. Right on? Come on. Yeah, that's right. God is good.
We hope you got a lot out of today's teaching and are able to apply it to your everyday life. Again, if you'd like to learn more, get connected, or give financially, just check out the link. We're glad you stopped by online, and we hope to see you real soon.